All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, glad you could join us. Don't worry, we will get to the national championship game tonight. We'll go over that with Dick Bogdanovich from William Hill. Desiree Reed-Francois, UNLV's athletic director, coming up in hour number 3 as well. But joining us on the line, as he always does every Monday, always love having him, it is attorney Micheal Avenatti. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Excellent, gentlemen. How are you guys doing?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. I wanted to start off, obviously, talking about Iran and your thoughts. We certainly had some of your opinions last week, but now that we've learned this new information, fairly new information, and I don't think it surprises any of us that the regime is now admitting to shooting down this airplane. There have been protests now in the streets, and it's horrible. Over 160 people have lost their lives. I mean, I'm not saying you should blame Donald Trump for this plane being shot down, but should there be some retribution for it? And what are your thoughts on this whole situation?
Well, I mean, this is what happens when you're in the fog of war or fog of conflict. Unfortunately, mistakes can happen. Frankly, I was surprised that the regime admitted to it. I was shocked. I don't know that I would have admitted to it had I been in their situation under the circumstances. I know for certain that Donald Trump would have certainly never admitted to something like that, even if it was true.
That's true.
Which probably tells you quite a bit about where we are as a country and whether we can trust our government and our president or not. But, mistakes happen when you're in the heat of combat. I think it's a tragic situation. And, it's very sad, obviously, for the victims and for a number of the members of their families, et cetera.
Sure, no question. Michael, I want to talk to you a little bit. You said the word trust in trusting this administration. It seems to me there's two different types of people, at least Republicans. There are some Republicans that want more information. They don't think they have enough information, in order to defend going after this guy and killing this general. And then there are other Republicans that say, nope, our intelligence is right. It was the right thing to do. And they don't want to question anything. I mean, 2 words, Iraq war. We started an ill-advised war in Iraq under George W. Bush, where thousands of our own troops died. Our troops have still been over there. Tens of thousands of innocent Iraqis have died. And just for that reason and that reason alone, I think it is fair to question and get more information. And now we have the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, saying that he didn't see any specific evidence that the top Iranian military commander was planning attacks on 4 U.S. embassies. I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, there's no evidence that there was any attacks that were imminent. I mean, this is a bunch of nonsense. I've been saying this from the moment that it came out, and the statements by officials in the Trump administration this weekend just confirms that. Every time you've seen somebody comment on this now, it's probably, maybe, perhaps. We assume, it's a bunch of nonsense. They had no evidence of any credible attack or imminent attack. They have pointed to that in an effort to assassinate a top general of a sovereign nation, someone who's very senior in the leadership of Iran. And look, we have the ability militarily to assassinate almost anybody we want at any given time. There's a very short list of individuals that could not be assassinated if we truly wanted to assassinate them. But sometimes, even though they may be a threat to the U.S. or to the world, we don't carry out those acts because of the repercussions and what might result. But Donald Trump didn't take any of that into consideration realistically before he ordered this hit, this assassination attempt. Now you have the administration trying to backpedal, trying to claim there was some imminent attack. Gentlemen, there was no imminent attack. I raised this point, I think it was last week. You've got to, if you actually believe that BS, you have to assume that the Iranians were planning these attacks on 4 U.S. embassies and other American assets. And they actually believed that after those attacks were carried out, that in no way, shape, or form could it be traced back to Iran. Because otherwise, if they did not believe that, then they would know that they would effectively be starting a war with America. I don't believe this for 1 minute. I think it makes the weapons of mass destruction claim look legitimate.
So, Michael, did you know that Donald Trump spoke fluent Arabic and typed in fluent Arabic? Because I didn't.
Well, look, I'm glad that he types and speaks a fluent language, because it's certainly not English. So I'm excited to find that out. I mean, I've been waiting for a while.
So he was the expectation was, so we kill Soleimani. They have basically a foiled attack against the Al Assad air base, and the expectation is, Donald Trump is the guy that's he's gonna cause a nuclear war. He's gonna cause World War III, and he decides he announces economic sanctions. Why do you think he did that as opposed to responding with force?
Well, I think that people around him probably explained the seriousness of this and explained to him that we were on the precipice of a major international conflict. And I think I've said this before. It's not just when something like this happens, it's not just, okay, what is Iran going to do to target America, and what is America going to do to target Iran? These conflicts don't happen in vacuums. I mean, there's a bunch of other stakeholders around the world, other factions, other nations, other leaders, that all of a sudden they weigh in on something. Mm-hmm. And these situations can get away from you in a very big hurry, because then next thing you know, you have the Israelis involved, you have the Iraqis involved, you have the Syrians involved, and that's how these things can spiral out of control in a big hurry. So I was actually pleased that there appears to have been an adult in the room. I don't know who it is, because it's certainly not Trump, but there was some adult in the room that prevailed upon him to back off.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
I tend to agree with you on that one. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with attorney Micheal Avenatti. All right, Michael, I want to play you a little bit of audio, because I usually never agree with Geraldo Rivera. But for the last several days on Fox News, he's been very consistent with his opinions, echoing a lot of what you said, actually, in that we shouldn't have gone after this guy, that it was a mistake, it was an impulsive decision. So this is Geraldo Rivera on the Sean Hannity show, debating Dan Bongino. I believe I'm pronouncing his name right. He is the buffoon who used to do NRA TV, and he's a talk show host, and he's a big right-wing supporter. So this is Dan Bongino and Geraldo Rivera getting into it on Sean Hannity. Have a listen to this.
Is this the new normal?
Did a nice job.
Is the new normal that we assassinate the people that we don't like? He's the #2 guy in the Iranian government.
We don't like.
He's like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Body bags. It's not like he showed up late for a birthday party. I mean, get your head out of your butt. Are you kidding me? People we don't like. You
insult. I never insult you personally, buddy.
Geraldo,
but you feel that you can go gutter surfing. I'm telling you right now that I disagree with this action. That doesn't mean that I am unpatriotic. That doesn't mean that I have any special insight. We picked the fight we didn't have to pick. We picked the fight we didn't have to pick at a time we didn't have to pick. What is the Trump doctrine? Isn't the Trump doctrine to bring the troops home?
Michael, your response to that, very interesting exchange.
I mean, Dan needs to maybe get off the roid cycle for a few weeks or something. I mean, this guy is out of control. Seriously. I mean,
he sounded like Jesse Ventura.
He needs to put the steroids down for maybe 6 weeks, and maybe find a marijuana dispensary and relax. I mean, this guy, and I've gotten into this guy before. I mean, all he does is he goes on television. He literally yells and screams at the top of his lungs. I actually thought the birthday party comment was funny, though. When I saw this, I did laugh at that. I enjoyed it. I have to give Bongino credit for that. But, Geraldo's been making a lot of sense lately, and I've been very critical of Geraldo, and he and I have gone at it on a number of occasions in the last 18 months. This is a guy that I used to really admire and look up to. I loved his reporting on 2020 and a lot of the work that he did. He's been irrecognizable to me, frankly, over the last few years relating to his support for Trump and a lot of his commentary on Fox. But I think he's been spot on relating to his assessment concerning Iran and that conflict.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I want to go back to this because I think this is a very important point, and we're certainly going to talk about it and debate it next hour. But, when the defense secretary comes out and says that he did not see any specific intelligence about possible embassy attacks. Again, let me repeat that. This is the defense secretary. How on earth does the Trump administration defend that, and how do you think they're going to try to spin it and defend that? Because I think this is really, really bad.
Well, I think it is really bad, and I think the way they're going to defend it is the way they defend most things, and that is they're just going to lie about it. And you're going to hear Trump basically suggest that he had specialized information or knowledge that his own defense secretary did not have, which is an absurd proposition. But there's millions of people that will actually buy into that nonsense, that BS. When he makes that statement, you watch. That's exactly what he's going to do. This whole claim that they were going to attack 4 American embassies is so outrageous to me. If they attacked 4 American embassies, there would be an absolute war declared against Iran. There'd be full military conflict. Iran would know that there'd be no escaping that. We're not talking about a single aerial strike or something like that. The full force and might of the American military would have been brought down upon Iran. They know that. I just think it's ridiculous. And I think that the administration should be forced to provide the intelligence, explain what credible information they actually had to support this, because I don't think there is any.
So let's talk 2020 election from the Democratic standpoint. In the state of Iowa, Bernie Sanders is said to have taken a lead over everybody else. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's any legs to this?
I mean, that may be true, but, Iowa's going to vote for Trump. The Democrats aren't going to carry Iowa. So I don't necessarily think that, Iowan Democrats at this point are a proper gauge of who the nomination be. Same thing goes for New Hampshire. I think this is really the rubber's going to meet the road when we get to South Carolina and Nevada, your state. In some of these other states. That's, in my view, a better indication of who the nominee should be.
So 21 days until Iowa. Cory Booker, as you know, Michael, just announced this morning that he is out of the race. I want to get first your thoughts on that. Cory Booker's made some very interesting comments saying that, he's not allowed on the stage because he's an African-American, accusing the party of basically being racist. So what are your thoughts on Cory Booker as a whole? Yeah, and him dropping out and some of the controversial things he said about the Democratic Party over the last few months.
Well, I think that he has contributed to the process substantially over the last few months. I never believed that he was a viable candidate for the nomination, at least in this cycle, for a bunch of reasons. Any claim that the Democratic Party, though, is racist is absurd. I can't tell you how many African-American individuals I know within the party. They have a lot of power within the party, a lot of control in the party. They have a big voice in the party. I just think any suggestion of that nature is completely baseless. I think that Cory Booker is certainly not done as it relates to the presidential stage or potentially as a vice presidential candidate, but it's not going to happen this cycle.
What do you make of Bernie Sanders now? Because he's first in Iowa and the New Hampshire polls. He's kind of flying under the radar a little bit, and, he's gaining ground and a lot of traction. What would you say to that?
Well, I mean, I think this race is going to come down to Biden and Bernie, and I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Biden for all the reasons that I've previously stated. I really think that those are going to be the two front runners, and I just think that Biden matches up better against Trump and has a much higher likelihood of beating Donald Trump in November, which, as I've said hundreds of times, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. Something that the media has not talked a lot about over the course of the last week and a half because of the Iranian strike and going after Soleimani is impeachment. So let's talk a little bit about that with you, Michael. Let's start with Pelosi. Apparently, she's expected to hand over the articles to the Senate this week. Still fighting over witnesses. What do you make of where we are at right now?
I think that's a critical mistake. I've been saying this for weeks. I do not think that these articles should be handed over in any way, shape, or form until the Democrats are absolutely assured that this is going to be a real trial with real witnesses and a real process that will not be changed in any way, shape, or form. As long as the Republicans appear to be positioning for a bogus, predetermined outcome, I don't think the articles should be handed over. There's nothing stopping the House from continuing to investigate, compelling witnesses to testify. For instance, Lev Parnas's attorney announced today that he's going to turn over additional materials to the House Select Committee. I think that information, as I've been saying for a while, is critical. I think that Parnas should be permitted to testify. I think the House should continue to take evidence and testimony. And I would not turn over these articles. I think it's a strategic error of significant proportion.
So when a guy like John Bolton comes out and he sends the message and he basically says flat out, listen, if I'm subpoenaed, I will testify. That's what he said. As a Republican, as a Mitch McConnell, for example, how do you live with yourself and how do you sleep well at night knowing that you have a guy like Bolton who is willing to testify? And we all know that a guy like Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, those Nunes, those types of people, they don't want him to testify because they know in all likelihood it would probably hurt the president. What would you say to a Mitch McConnell who clearly is having private meetings with the president, working with him, he and his administration, to make sure that guys like Bolton will not testify?
Well, I mean, McConnell sold out a long time ago to Trump and vice versa. I mean, it's not about right and wrong or ethics or anything of that nature at this point, guys. I mean, it's really all about whether the president is willing to take policy positions that are consistent with what Mitch McConnell and other Republicans want. And those policy positions are driven by, low taxes, less regulation, pro-life, and guns. I mean, that's, that accounts for probably about 85% of what we're talking about here. And as long as Trump is willing to take the lead from McConnell and others and basically stake out positions that are consistent with their vision of what America should look like and the policies that our government should implement and should stand behind, Trump's going to basically be able to do whatever the hell he wants to do.
So we've discussed kind of ad nauseum the states, the Rust Belt states, the swing states that you believe that Trump or Biden needs to have that are going to basically decide the 2020 election. And coal mining is a common job in those states. And actually 4 weeks ago, Trump signed a bill that guarantees the coal miners and coal miner retirees their pension. Do you think that that's going to change the landscape of things for Trump in 2020?
I don't think it's going to necessarily change it, but it's certainly going to assist him. I mean, they're focused on 5 or 6 key states, the 5 or 6 key states that we've talked about ad nauseum. And they understand that it's all about the Electoral College. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. It would not surprise me if Trump lost by over 6 million individual votes, the popular vote, but was reelected. And I mean, I just think if that happens, people are just going to be irate. I mean, the division, you think we're divided now, wait till if that happens.
So I want to ask you a little bit about the final debate tomorrow until the Iowa caucuses within the Democrats. I guess my question to you is, what do you expect? Who do you think needs to have a really strong performance? Talk to me a little bit about the upcoming debate tomorrow and a preview of it and what you expect.
I think Biden needs to basically maintain status quo. I think as long as he doesn't have a disastrous night, he should be fine. I think the same thing as it relates to Bernie. I have to tell you, by the way, every time I see Larry David on Saturday Night Live do Bernie Sanders,
isn't it great?
It is the absolute best. I mean, it is beyond. I think Larry David does Bernie Sanders better than Bernie Sanders does Bernie Sanders.
Did you know? But Michael, did you know that they are actually related?
No, they're not. Really?
Yes, they are. Like third generation related.
I'm not shocked at all by that.
I saw that, and it's crazy. It's crazy, but I can see it. I just think Larry David is so excellent on Saturday Night Live doing Sanders.
Yep.
I think that Mayor Pete's going to have to, have a really good night to stay in this thing long term. And the same thing with Elizabeth Warren. I mean, she's faded quite a bit, and I think that a lot of Democrats are rightfully very concerned about her electability and her ability to beat Donald Trump. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think she'd make a great president. I think she'd match up well against a lot of candidates. She has no shot of beating Donald Trump in 2020.
Agree.
It's not going to happen.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. And I'm actually starting to think more and more that Joe Biden probably has the best chance. But I want to ask you, switching topics here. You're an attorney. You've won over $1 billion in settlements in your lifetime. You're obviously have been extremely successful at what you do and one of the most prominent attorneys in the country. So I want to ask you about this case. We had Nicholas Sandmann's attorney on our show last week. And as you know, Sandmann is the kid that has that smirk on his face, that stands his ground with the MAGA hat, kids standing behind him. And his attorney claimed defamation with many different entities, including CNN. CNN, they're not saying how much money, no one's really saying how much money they paid this family. I would imagine it's probably millions of dollars that could last him and his family a lifetime. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think, in my personal opinion, I see drunk drivers killing people and people paralyzed, and they're lucky if they get 10 grand. It's horrible. I don't think this kid deserved anywhere near the amount of money that CNN probably paid him. So I want to get your thoughts on this case, start to finish, and what do you make of CNN, paying him and his family?
Well, Brian, I don't think it was a lot of money.
Really?
I just don't. I don't believe that CNN parted with millions of dollars in connection with this case.
How much do you think it was?
About it, and look, it could be as little as $1 and an apology. It could be $100,000, $50,000.
Really?
I'd be shocked. I will tell you this: if it was more than $500,000, you know what I'm going to say? If it was more than $250,000, I'd be shocked.
Wow. I'm actually surprised to hear you say that. I believe you. See, listen, if it was $250,000, you pay your attorney 30%, give the kid $150 grand. I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay with that. What I'm not.
I mean, what are the damages? The kid's got to show.
Yeah.
Look, the damage analysis in that case.
It's absurd.
I mean, this is what I do for a living, right? So
right.
I have a foundation upon which to talk about this.
Sure.
The damage analysis in that case, and to quantify his damages would be very, very difficult
right.
At trial. He would not necessarily be a sympathetic plaintiff. Certainly, others may not be sympathetic towards CNN. I'd be shocked if it was more than $250,000, and if it was anywhere close to $1 million,
right.
I would, you'd have to resuscitate me.
Well, you know what? I'll let JD do that. I'm happy to hear you say that because I didn't think this kid deserved much money at all. But as far as the case goes, he did an interview and said that he was trying to de-escalate the situation, which I think is an absolute joke. If somebody is in danger or feels like they're in danger, number one, are they going to stand their ground? And number two, are they going to have a smirk on their face while their friends behind them are laughing and joking around? To me, that whole de-escalation argument he's full of crap, and I think he got that from his attorney and or his family, and I think he's a liar.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan, and that's not because he's on the right. I just think he's kind of a punk, to be honest with you. And that would be, I'd say the same thing if he was on the left. I mean, I didn't like the whole confrontation. I didn't like the smirk on his face. I just didn't like the way that he approached it. But that's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think that other media outlets will be more accountable now that they know that there's a possibility they can get sued and it can cost them some money?
Not necessarily, because of what I said earlier, and that is I just don't think it's a ton of money. I think look, I'm not minimizing $250,000 or $500,000, although again I'd be shocked if it was over $250,000. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not going to necessarily change conduct by CNN and others.
Well, I heard a rumor that Biff is going to be filing a lawsuit against you for calling him Biff. Is there any truth to that rumor?
I've got to believe you're kidding me right now.
Yes,
I would he's 1,000% kidding.
I would love that. I mean, that would be like a second Christmas for me in January. God, nothing would make me happier than if that happened.
I also heard a rumor that you're suing him for his book, which I heard is horrible. I read one paragraph of it and I had to stop. I don't know if you have.
Well, I mean, you guys were kind enough to give me a copy when I was there. The second printing with the specialized title, which I appreciate very much.
How's your boy Tucker Carlson doing these days? By the way, I know you guys are very close.
Oh yeah, we're incredibly close, Tucker and I. The Tucker's the gift that keeps on giving, because he every week he says something else that is. More moronic than what he said the week before.
Hey, Michael, are the Kansas City Chiefs going to win the Super Bowl?
I hope so. I'd love to see Kansas City go back to the Super Bowl, because it's been a long time. It just shows you, that's what makes sports so great. You can never predict what's going to happen. I mean, I thought the Ravens were going to, I thought for sure they would be in the Super Bowl, and I predicted that they would win it all, and they just got absolutely destroyed yesterday, which shocked a lot of people. But that's one of the reasons why people love sports so much. You never know what's going to happen.
That's true. Well, Michael, when are you coming out to Vegas, man? We got to see you in studio one of these days.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll be out there in the next few weeks, and
Cool.
Would love to spend some time with you guys to catch up.
Awesome.
And always a pleasure, and congratulations on your success. You guys keep killing it.
I'm gonna sue you for those nice remarks, Michael. Anyway, Michael, always great to hear from you, my man. We know how busy you are. We appreciate your time. Have a fantastic week, and we will catch up with you next week, my friend. Thank you so much.
And go Tigers, GEAUX.
Yes.
Yeah, the Tigers.
Yes.
One of the Tigers are definitely going to win tonight.
That's LSU.
That's what I heard. Yeah, Michael, thank you so much, man. Appreciate
thanks
it.
a lot, Michael.
All right.
All right, there you go. Attorney Micheal Avenatti joining us on the line. Wow, we got to a lot of stuff. Actually, very interesting. He doesn't think that this kid Sandman got much of a settlement. I'm actually glad to hear that, and I hope he's right, because I don't think that kid deserved much of anything. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the imminent threat, the supposed imminent threat. Well, guess what? That narrative is diminishing by the minute. I'll explain exactly what that means. Phone lines are open if you want to give us a call. 702-257-5396. Again, that number if you want to be a part of the conversation. We will take your calls next hour on the other side of the break. 257-5396. And your thoughts on Micheal Avenatti's appearance. That and much, much more. We'll talk about the supposed imminent threat coming up next. You're listening to the Vegas Take.